So, good morning from a not so sunny Bournemouth. It's my last day down here on Dorset. Well, just this morning really, and then I have to head off later. So I knew that the forecast was going to be bad for this morning. It's not bad in the sense that it's not raining. It's just thick, overcast. So I knew there wouldn't be any chance of a sunrise or colours. So I decided to come down to Bournemouth Beach instead. So Bournemouth is a lovely place, always been one of my favourite places to come. Great in the summer, of course. Look at this beautiful sandy beaches that stretch for miles and miles along the Dorset coast. Obviously in the summer, extremely busy. But this time of year, end of April, not so busy. And it's a great time to come down here and do some photography. Now, one interesting feature, you've got the pier over there of course, but one interesting feature about Bournemouth Beach are these groynes here, and they're really great for doing some long exposures as the waves and the sea comes in and laps around the groyne itself. So that's what I'm doing this morning. Despite the fact that it's very grey and there's not much colour, I've decided to come down and try some creative straight on shots using about a 1 second exposure to blur the water. So let me show you on the screen what I've done. So you can see here I've placed the groyne right down the center of the composition, and I've gone for a vertical composition here, and I've gone right in tight. Now, one useful feature of the live view is to use the grids there. The grids can help you to get everything straight and everything centralized, which is what I've done here. I've got the groyne centralized right down the middle, and I've used the grid also to make sure that my horizon is perfectly straight. So everything is nicely lined up. So I don't often use the grid in compositions, but when shooting shots like this where symmetry is important, then the grid is essential really in this respect. So basically what I've done, there we go, shoot one now. So I've included a tiny bit of the sand there for some colour, and then the sky and the water. I've gone for if we can show the settings. So I've gone for a high key effect. I'm pushing the exposure over to the right as much as possible, I've got +1 exposure compensation here so that I can make everything nice and bright and high key. And if we look here, everything is nice and bright. If we look at the if we look here at the histogram, I've pushed the histogram to the right. This is also called exposing to the right. But also, in this case, I want to get that high key effect. So I want to make the scene nice and bright. And to do that, you need to push the exposure to the right. Oh. So you see, we've got a nice bright image here. And that kind of helps to compensate. If we exposed normally, then you would get the grayness of this scene. So by pushing the exposure to the right, we've brightened it up a bit, made it look really nice. And this could also convert nicely to black and white. So I'm definitely going to try to also do a black and white one. So the key when shooting something like this is to watch the sea. As that water comes in, shoot for different effects. Now, earlier on, there you go, there's some different effects. Now I tried to get as much as possible where some shots where the sea fills the whole of the foreground and some shots where we get a bit of the sand there as well. So the tide's going out actually. Okay. There you go. That looks nice. There you go. So just as it laps there, I take my shot, I take another one as it recedes. So you can get some different effects when the water's coming in here we go, and when the water starts to recede. As the water starts to recede, that slightly long exposure gives you a nice effect. So, the trick here is to play around with different effects and at the end of the day pick out which one worked the best. You see, I took that one just before the wave broke there, and you can catch them when the waves break like that or just before the waves break to get different effects. Now, the exposure time is around half a second here. I've been shooting around 1 second to half a second to get these different effects. If you shoot any longer, if you shoot really long exposure, then you will end up, there we go, then you will end up with a completely smoothed out sea. You wouldn't get any of these white foamy ripple and streaky effects if you do a super long exposure. But it can also look nice too. So let's have a go at that, shall we? So now it's the sun's well up, and although it's overcast, it's still pretty bright. So in order to get a really long exposure, I'm going to stick a 10-stop ND filter on there. So I've put a 10-stop square filter on here. This is a Kase 10-stop glass square filter. Fantastic filter, it really is. And this is going to help give me a much longer exposure. Now I only really want 30 seconds. The 10 stop's quite strong. So in order to get 30 seconds, I had to take the aperture down to f9 and the ISO up to ISO 400. And that's given me a 30-second exposure. And a 30-second exposure gives you an entirely different effect So here we go, let's do that now. 30 seconds. So you can see now the 30-second exposure has an entirely different effect. Really nice, everything is smoothed out, silky smooth, almost dreamy like. And this is also a perfect kind of fine art image. So with this kind of shot too, you could also look at zooming in, getting rid of the sand, and just focusing on, there we go, and getting a shot where you've just got the groin, the sky, and the whole of the sea. Now this works well on a really long exposure too, I think. So let's see how that looks. So there you see you have a really dreamy image, which I think could also convert nicely to black and white. Now, it's really useful having this L bracket on here, which means that I can very quickly and easily switch my composition from a vertical to a horizontal. So now I got that nice tight composition there with a long exposure and with the ND filter on. I'm now going to flip it to horizontal and try one like that too. So now I've switched it to a horizontal format, and instead, the previous image when it was upright, I had a 6:4 aspect ratio. This time I've gone for the 16:9 because I've moved it to a horizontal and it works better as a 16:9 aspect ratio. So you can see that I've used the lines again to centralize the groin and make sure that my horizon is nice and straight. So now we'll do a 30-second exposure on this. And there's my horizontal 30-second exposure. An image like this could also work well in a 1:1. So there, the square format. Let's try one of these. So it doesn't always have to be flaming sunsets and gorgeous light. Even on a grey day or a grey morning like this, then there are images you can get. It's a perfect time for high key, long exposure, kind of fine art kind of images. You just need to find the right subject for that image, and the sea and a groin like this, a very simplistic, minimalist scene, works perfectly. So this is the last day of my scouting trip and photography trip around Dorset, and as you can see, there are many different places we can go and many different things that we can do, and even if the weather turns bad, there are things like this that we can come and do. So definitely you won't be sitting indoors moaning about the weather, that's for sure. So I hope you found this useful, and if you did, as always, please give this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and check out some of my other videos. And if you're anywhere near Dorset, come down and visit this region. This region is called the Jurassic Coast, and it is the most amazing place. I absolutely love this part of the UK. So if you're interested in my Dorset workshop, then I'll put a link down in the description. Please go check out my website and check out info. Hopefully I'll be running them either this autumn and next spring, or maybe both. Okay, so thanks for watching. Catch you later. Bye bye.